to the World of Ability Podcast Network. My name is Emily Gilmer and a podcast engineer here. And we're excited to bring you another episode of the SB Bridge Show with Suzanne Plumley. We are here every Tuesday at 11 a.m. Central. And we'd love to have you as a guest. So if you are interested, please let us know. We can get that arranged. Um, but this is all about like diagnosis, Asperger's, and so on. So I'll pass it over to Suzanne to kick us off and introduce our great guest today. So welcome,
Great,
Suzanne.
Emily. Thank you so much. And my wonderful guest is Theresa Garvin here. And let me start out by saying, first of all, technology, we have grace for technology. My bridge is MIA right now. Or you could say that it's too hot. It's July. And I'm inside enjoying the air conditioning. So welcome to my room. We've seen it once or twice, but I'm in enjoying the cool air of July in Texas. Without that being said, I just wanted to let you know why the bridge is not here. Let me tell you, with all the wonderful, awesome people out in the world that are telling you what the traits of Asperger's and autism are, such as Paul Micallef in Australia and Sam Stein in the Netherlands, Sarah Hendricks in the UK, Temple Grandin right here in the US, as well as myself and many others. You don't need another person telling you exactly what autism is. The mission of the Asper Bridge is to help those who are stuck on the neurodivergent force, or actually in the neurodivergent force, feeling stuck, feeling frustrated, feeling ashamed, feeling victimized by a late diagnosis, or even any diagnosis of autism. That's what the mission of the Asper Bridge is. If you will come to me, I, as the torchbearer, will help you to join up with people like Theresa and all my other wonderful guests you've seen here, and they will help you go back into society, and they won't just drop you off there. They will really make sure that you feel supported. It's not a one-time go and then you're off on your own. That's why I created the Asper Bridge and Bridge Builders, to know that you have people who are supportive in the society, who do care about you thriving. And Theresa is one of those people for
Thank
sure
you.
who is here. So Theresa, tell us about yourself.
Well, thank you, Suzanne. Thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here. So, my name is Theresa Garvin, and I'm a licensed certified independent social worker and a transformational life coach. And so, I have been in the field of psychotherapy for over 35 years. But about 2018, which might be the year I met Suzanne, I started doing my own search for something beyond therapy. And I stumbled upon transformational coaching first for myself. And when I went through the programs that Suzanne has probably talked about and the institute we were trained in, the changes that I made were so fast, were so deep and lasting, and I just could not stop learning about it. I fell in love with transformation. I fell in love with transformational coaching and the institute we trained under. And so I ended up in 2022. I was certified in 2020, and then in 2022, I transitioned from my full-time psychotherapy practice to create my business, which is called The Life You Imagine. And what I do is provide transformational coaching to adults through a masterclass. And I created my own programs that were very much based on the teachings of Mary Morrissey and the Brave Thinking Institute. But I also had a deep, deep yearning to help families. And you'll probably hear later on, because I think Suzanne will be talking about this, but I have my own personal reasons that I wanted to create thriving families, which is the name of my program. I also I had professional reasons as well as personal. So I'm very excited to be here and share anything that could be of value to anybody. And Suzanne is a fabulous coach whom I've had the privilege of knowing for a few years now. And I'm so thrilled that you made this podcast, that you're doing these every week. I think it's fabulous.
Thank you, Teresa. I love doing them. And if you had asked me back in 2018, I couldn't even get on camera either. And that's what makes, when you talk about it being such a fast transformation, one, we need to be willing. If you're not willing, you're not going to transform. And that's what I've told all of my ladies for the last 20 weeks. I'm like, first of all, you have to step up to the bridge.
Yeah.
We're not going to come get you. Because if we come get you, you won't have an interest in going.
Well, no one can save you, right? No one can save you.
No one can save you. You have to save yourself. Exactly. Yes. And my transformation, there is a program within BTI called Brave Thinking Masters. And that was the first program I signed up for in
Me too.
2018. And let me tell you, I had 8 years of therapy with an unskilled, non-Theresa therapist who said, "Oh, you're just clinically depressed. Here's some Zoloft. Take some Zoloft. You'll feel better." No, I didn't. But in 2 months of being at Brave Thinking Masters, my whole world shifted. Now, there were a couple of parts, and I told you about that in other weeks, that led up to my joining Brave Thinking Masters. And that was all part of my transformation. But in 2018, let's just say from February until December, my world completely shifted. 8 years of therapy was changed in 1 year, 2018. Wow. And so when I experienced the change in me, I said, wow, I can help others do it. So by the end of December of 2018, I was also a coach as well.
Yep.
Now, I started out as a positive, supportive language coach. And a lot of people I serve women who are this or men who are that. I actually started out with a concept because in my childhood, I didn't feel like I was spoken to in a very positive or supportive manner. Mm-hmm. It was more manipulative, more controlling, more you can't, or stop doing this or stop doing that. I'm like, that's not very empowering.
No.
It's not very empowering at all. And so I feel like right now I could be so much further than I am, but I'm going to accept where I am because I got there because of BTI, and I am ever so grateful for all I've learned. So my first year, I was a I was a positive, supportive language coach because I wanted to help people communicate better, more consciously. I think so often with the use of our phones, we forget how to speak to people in a filtered, positive, supportive manner. We just kind of say whatever comes off the top of our mind because we can hide behind these little screens. And I don't think that that's the best. Mm-hmm. I don't feel that, the phone's a convenience, but that doesn't mean you let down your manners, your ethics, your concern for others. And when I got fired back in 2018, that little boy went home and told his mother, who was stuck on her phone. And that's why he had to tell her that a teacher hit him. That was the only way to get her to put her phone down. Wow. Is by using something that serious to get her attention. Now, we're not going to go into that. I've already told you that story. But the purpose of this one is to tell you the people around you that you see every day, day in, day out, do not deserve to have you say whatever comes to the top of your mind and out your mouth. They also, or especially, require you to use your thinking, to care about them and use your words carefully. They're the ones you spend a lot of time with. They're the ones that deserve you to really be conscious about what you say to them. Now, I want to tell you that my story, when I was growing up, and I'm going to ask Theresa to describe her story in a moment. When I was growing up, I had two brothers. I've told you that. I was the peanut butter in the middle of two pieces of bread. Now, for some reason, whatever it was, I can't tell you, except for the fact that my mom was wanting boys. She grew up in girls, so we'll say it there. My mom was wanting, so the boys were allowed to do all the speaking. All the speaking. And I sat down at the dinner table eating my dinner, waiting for an invitation to interject. Didn't come. Didn't come. And I looked at my mom. I remember this like it was yesterday. I looked at my mom and said, she's like,
Wow.
that was all she gave me. And so one of my brothers had just joined the golf team. And so he decided that he was going to tell us club by club, shot by shot, hole by hole, how he did on the golf course every single night. And because my family was big into golf, they allowed it.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, the only golf I like is miniature golf because I have been on the greens more times than I never played the game. Who needs to play the game when you're hearing about the game every day? So let me tell you about a little thing I created. Now, this is part of my Personally Yours business, but I came up with this idea. This is a basket, and I'm kind of glad I don't have my virtual because you couldn't see it. What I suggest families do is this: come up with a conversation where everybody can be involved. Now, whenever someone gets a chance to participate, they get to take their ball out of the basket. Then the next person goes. They get to take their ball out of the basket. When the balls are all done, you know that everybody in the family had a chance to express a story, a high point, a low point, an idea, or even vote on something. Now, had there been balls? Oh, and these balls are based on the person's personality. Like this one is a sewing one that's based on my personality. I love to craft, but they're all different ones. Here's the space one for the boys or a fire engine. But anyway, it's just to show that each person will feel good about having a ball that represents them. And then, as I say, when they each get a chance to talk with everybody, including mom and dad, they each take their bowl out of the basket. When the basket is empty, you know everyone has had a valid time to express who they are. And that's important because everyone wants a chance to talk about their day.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what was your day like? What was your dinner table experience like, Theresa?
Well, it's an interesting question, and you're going to see right away that maybe the underpinning or the early start for me thinking about um, families that are not thriving came from my own upbringing. And so I was thinking about dinner time. And as you were telling your story, and in my house, we only had dinners together until my mother went back to work. So from 0 to age 7, I remember we had some dinners together at night a lot of times. And my father stole the show. He was the main talker at dinner, and he would either
So
tell
he
jokes.
had the ball the whole time.
He had the ball the whole time, most of it. Sometimes he'd let my sister chime in, the high achiever, and the two of them would either tell a joke or do sarcasm towards other people, or he would tell a story from work. But my mother would be in the background serving everybody and running up to get everybody what they wanted. And I remember thinking and saying to her, are you ever going to sit down and eat yourself? Because that seemed to be her role. And I'm the youngest of 4. I have 2 older brothers and an older sister. And so there was really no balls for me. There was no space. And so if I did speak up, especially at the dinner table, I would either be ridiculed or laughed at somehow or told, be quiet, doesn't matter. But part of that is I just chalked it up to that's what happens when you're the youngest. So it didn't take long before I just stopped trying. I didn't try to have conversations, and I grew to not like meals in our house. And so when my mother went back to work as a nurse, and she would work 3 to 11, so we stopped having dinners together many nights, and I actually liked that better because I did not enjoy the dinner table.
It's
So
interesting because the third child can, or the last child can have either the golden role or the negative role. In my case, the golfer was the youngest.
oh,
So yeah, it's interesting. So that's why I say the baby of the family can go one way or the other. They're
yeah.
either forgotten or they're the ones who are taking the show.
Oh, I see. My sister was the oldest, and she was the golden child, and I was this. I would call myself the scapegoat, the one that, no matter what I
Mm-hmm.
said or did, I felt like people wanted me not seen or heard. So that was what it was like for me growing up.
Well, that was my role too. I was the scapegoat as well, and
Yeah.
it's the fact that I had hypothyroidism and I was not expected to be intellectually equal, and well, we won't go there. But
Right.
yes, I understand. Dinner table was not my favorite time to speak either. And that's
Well,
where I started to come up with the idea of the balls. Let's make sure that
yes.
we start getting families in there. Now, why talk about the dinner table? Well, the dinner table or the dinner time period, or even whether it be with your small nucleus family or even extended family. We're going into July 4th here in the USA. A lot of families get together.
Hmm.
That doesn't mean that you get to be unfiltered with them either. You really still need to be conscious with them. But if you think about it, dinner time is when most people are in the same room at the same time. And that's when things can get heated up and feelings can be really kind of jostled around, and it can be a very tempestuous time. Now, when my older daughter was about a year old, I was involved in a group, and this group was called um, Parent Child Connection. And we were taught about family meetings. And I'm like, well, when I was with my girls, I started incorporating that and making sure. And we learn in our organization that you either go by design or default. Default would have been me continuing the same dinner time ritual that I had in my family and end up hurting someone. Or design means, nope, I'm going to switch it all around. I'm going to make sure both girls, and we even had a neighborhood girl who came to join us many nights. I made sure they all had a voice
Hmm.
because I didn't have a voice. And I think that that's important. But during family meetings, where do you want to go on our next summer vacation? Who's gonna do the chores next week or divvying up the chores next week? It's a time when families should be able to communicate consciously but freely. In other words, no one should be shut out, and at the same time, everyone gets to know that there are going to be a code of talking in your family. And I think that's very important that people know what the code of heart centered talking is.
Hmm.
Not just, oh, well, you jerk. Why did you do that? I
Yeah.
mean, that's just never appropriate because we're supposed to be able to go home to our families and know it's safe and not have to feel like we have to go on guard or put on armor, which I've
Hmm.
had to do a couple of times. Put on armor. And let's just skip past my story. I told that last week. But anyway, your family should be the safe place. not an angst place, as Teresa and I both talked about. Now, Teresa, I wrote down about 4 of the habits that I found that were most challenging to me: button pushing, joke jabbing, invalidating experiences, and hijacking someone's story. Can you think of others that come to you? And then we'll talk about each one.
In terms, are these, would you put them under a category, Suzanne, of unhealthy family patterns, something like that?
Unhealthy family communications, yeah.
Communication. Okay. Yeah, no, I thought those were excellent, and you sent them to me, and I was thinking about examples from my own and some of my clients' stories as well. So those are good. I think it'd be great to explain those.
Perfect. All right, let's go. And I figured this would take the majority of our talking because we really want people to understand that if you can set up this code of everyone in the family understanding what this means, then maybe you can start to bypass it. So the first one is button pushing. Let's say that a member of your family gets a little sensitive about what happened on your last vacation. And then you don't want someone in your family saying, "Hey, remember what happened last time we went there?" Well, actually, that would be joke jabbing. Let's back up. Button pushing is, and maybe you can even help me a little bit
Yeah.
more. Button pushing is more private. It's kind of getting someone all upset on purpose,
Yeah. I,
taking an insecurity or sensitivity and needling the person and getting them to get upset by pushing that button on that topic. How would you further explain that so we can make it
no,
clear?
I think that was that last part really clarified it, but I would kind of echo what you said and maybe just add in that the person who is the button pusher, meaning that they are saying or doing things that they already know will bother you or trigger you in some way to get upset. Um, Sometimes they're doing it very consciously and purposefully for some other motive of theirs, like they have a reason to want to get you upset. Or sometimes, I used to think this was the case with my mother. I think she would do it, but not really on purpose in terms of needling, but just because what Suzanne explained in the beginning about being a conscious communicator and being aware of how her communication affected the rest of us. She was very much, my mother was lacking in that department. So she would say kind of whatever came to mind. If it was a put down, or if we got upset, that wouldn't necessarily stop her from saying it again and again and again. So I think of that as button pushing, whether the person does it purposefully or consciously or not. What they're doing, the other person in the family is doing, is saying or doing things that they've already seen cause a rise in you, your discomfort or agitation, or irritate you in some way, or is a sore spot, as Suzanne said.
Yeah, it could even be like, let's just say you and your brothers or sisters are sitting down at the to watch a movie. Even, oh yeah, she needs to have her candy bars right by her.
Yes.
And if someone's struggling with their weight, and you're
Yes.
making up, oh,
Or
ouch.
yes. Or something even as simple as, oh, are you sure you want to watch that movie with the big kids? Because you might have cried the last time. So I don't know if you can handle it.
Well, that takes
Yeah.
us right into the next one because I tend to think, and you can tell me if you agree or not, button pushing can be even just two people talking.
Yes.
And it doesn't require the whole family. There's no audience. It's just getting a rise out of you
Getting
because
a
they
rise
know
out of
that
something.
something
Yes.
bothers you,
Yep.
and they're going to make sure that they bring it up to get you all upset again.
Yes.
Now, the next one is joke jabbing. Remember what happened last time you did that?
Yeah.
And you're usually in front of the big crowds, and that can happen, especially when the joke jabber knows they have an audience.
Mhm.
And that
Yes.
is really hurtful. Oh, just like Teresa was saying, oh, you cried the last time we watched a horror movie. Are
Yeah.
you sure you want to do that in front of our cousins?
Yeah, exactly.
That's just not necessary.
Yeah.
Or why don't you have another candy bar?
Yeah.
Or, I mean, it's just things that aren't appropriate. Oh,
Yeah.
are you sure
That are
you?
intended to hurt, whether they're aware of it or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I sometimes think that joke jabbing is on purpose. Someone just wants to have the upper hand, and they're
It
like,
is. Yeah,
they
usually it is.
want to really humiliate you in front of the whole group. And that's never
Or they
okay.
want, or what they value more is that they get a laugh, and even if it's at your expense, they're not going to focus on the your expense part because their priority or goal is to get the laugh.
Right.
So it might be at the cost of somebody else's feelings or experience, but their main goal is to get the laugh.
Exactly.
That's how it was in my family.
Yeah, no, and we have to start practicing in our own families before we even go into public. I mean, think about it. These are the people that you spend the most time around.
Mm-hmm.
You don't want to do it in public either. That's not cool either. You people will just think you're the jerk
Right.
if you're the one being the button pusher in public or being the jabber in public. But at home, you can really strike up some hard feelings where people don't want to come back for the next occasion, and that's not right. Let's go into the third one: invalidating experiences. Telling someone that it's not a big deal. Why are you all upset over that? That's just stupid. I don't know why you're getting all upset. Well, if someone's sensitive to a topic,
Mm-hmm.
you never have a right to tell them how they should feel or
Mm-hmm.
what they should think. The other thing is that let's say that that person is being compassionate to another person's situation. And then that one person says, you have no idea what it's like. Why are you telling me you understand when you don't understand? Well, that's just a matter of feeling for the person and not saying, I know it must be hard. But you don't say to the person, yeah, you have no idea what it's like. Well, they're trying to. And in our organizations, you can also say, well, tell me more. But I mean, it's just never right to say to someone, you have no idea what I'm feeling. That's invalidating the person's concern for you. Or you have no reason to be upset over that particular situation. That's not a big deal. I don't like it when people would say that to me. You have no right to be upset. That's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
Go
I
ahead,
know.
Teresa.
Yeah, I was just going to say one that I remember even as a kid, but definitely more as I grew up. If I was trying to relate to a story from the past, and I would say, whether it was to my brother or my mother about, remember when this happened? And I would tell my version of what happened. And inevitably, my mother would say, that never happened, or that's not the way it happened. You have a poor memory.
Yes. Oh my gosh.
That didn't happen.
Yes, that's a
To me,
big
that's
one.
invalidating your experience.
Well, no, you're not. You're not
Yeah.
autistic.
Yeah.
You're just not autistic. I'm like, have you lived my life for the last 56 years?
Wow.
I'm like, just because I am learned how to breathe through it doesn't mean that I'm not.
Right.
It just means that I've learned how to find my inner calm. But don't tell me I'm not something just because you don't want to believe it. That would
Yes.
also be invalidating someone's experiences.
Yes.
Now,
Yes.
the last one is hijacking the story. Let's just say that someone is telling you a story about what happened to them, and they are trying to explain because they want support, or they want to know how to solve a problem, or they want to know, just get it out and release it. And
Mm-hmm.
then someone in the family says, yeah, that happened to me. Let me tell you about the story. And the first person isn't even done getting what they needed from their own personal story before someone else jumps in and says, "Yeah, that's not a big deal. Let me tell you my story." And they try to escalate their story to be more important than your story. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
The number of times that one happened. Go ahead, Teresa.
No, I was just going to echo what you said. That is a good example of hijacking the story when there's somebody who's going to steal the show, um, and kind of downplay your story or ignore it or ignore your story. Act as if
Right.
you weren't even talking because suddenly they thought of something that they thought was a better story and they just kind of jump in and take over the conversation.
Definitely. And I
Yeah.
talked about that either last week or the week before. Ask, or don't even ask. Wait till the person's done and say, and invite you to tell your story. Oh, really? That happened to you? What did you do? That's the perfect words. When you hear the words, what did you do? That's when you can come in and tell your story. But don't jump in the middle, because the person who is telling the story hasn't received what they need from it, which is support, compassion, or a solution. Now, maybe you do have a valid solution. Maybe you do have a similar story, but wait for the invitation, and then you won't be criticized for hijacking the story.
Yeah, I didn't know. Do you want us to give examples of what the people who have this happen to them, like what they could say as a response?
Yeah, because
Because
I think if we can break these habits, the more examples we have, the
yeah.
better.
So for the hijacking the story, I was thinking the person who got hijacked, who got cut off, they could choose whether or not they want to say something as soon as the person cuts them off, and very assertively saying, "Excuse me, but I wasn't finished with my story, and I would love to hear your story, but can you let me finish mine first?" Or
Mm-hmm.
if they know the people involved that it won't go well if they handle it that way, another option that they have is to wait until the end of the person who hijacked this with their story and then say, "Well, I heard your story, and can I tell mine now, because I didn't get to finish mine and I very much would like to tell mine." Or like in my family, I felt like there was so much competition to talk or to be seen and noticed and like complimented for something. There was all that competition. There was all that competition with the siblings.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so um, I think that for me, because I was a more introverted, shy, quiet child, and so I just opted out. So I didn't want to share stories with my family because
It
I
wasn't
didn't.
safe.
No, it wasn't safe, and I just didn't want to be part of all that competition. So those are three options. You can just choose not to share your story. You could cut them off as soon as they cut you off and say, "Excuse me," but you could do it politely. "Excuse me, I know you want to tell your story, but can I finish mine first?" Or you can wait until they're done hijacking and then say, "Oh, well, that was interesting, and now I'd like to finish mine because I never
Yeah,
got to
I,
finish
I
my
would
story."
I would almost want to tell them, don't let someone disrespect you by telling their story. I would say, "Excuse me, I wasn't done yet," which is what you had said.
Yeah.
I hate to see someone not tell their story just because other people think that they're more important. And I grew up with some of that
Yeah.
too. Was people thought
Yes.
they were more important. So I would like to encourage you to take that middle choice, which is say, "Excuse me, I wasn't done with my
Yeah.
story yet. I'll let you know when it's your turn, or I'll invite you to share your story when I'm done."
As
And
long as
that
you feel the
ends.
person's safe who you're going to say that to. Because the only reason I gave the other example about either
Yeah.
not sharing your story or about waiting till the end. So, for example, in my family, if it was my father, I could not say that. I could not feel safe
Oh,
saying that.
parental.
Even if
Yes.
I was all grown up, and I still tried to say, cut him off, it would have ended poorly for me if I had done that. And I had enough
Good to know.
exposure and experience to realize that. So I would have probably opted for the first or the third, just with my father. Now, with other people in different social scenarios, I will do what Suzanne said. I might say, "Oh, excuse me, I want to finish my. Is it okay if I finish my story because I wasn't done?" I totally agree with you that that's a healthy way to approach
Yeah.
it
Well, and
if
you
you
brought up
feel
a good
safe.
point. You have to know who you feel safe around
Yes.
as to which solution. I mean, maybe there are different people, just like Teresa was saying, there are different people that you can have to use different tactics with.
Yes, absolutely.
With a
Absolutely.
younger brother or sister or an older brother or sister, you can say that, excuse me, I wasn't done. But
Right.
parents are a little different. They can be a little bit stickier to jump in and say, and I get that. As soon as you said it was your father, I'm like, oh yeah, no,
Yeah, they'll
I
take it as
totally get that.
disrespect. Yeah.
Yeah, I totally get that. Totally get that. Oh my gosh.
There's a lot
I'm
of
hoping.
nuances, right? There are a lot of
Yeah.
nuances to conversations and communication. And that's why it's so hard to just come up with hard and fast rules, because you can have
Mm.
rules of language or communication, and then emotions and other people's reactions, if you start to throw all those into the mix, it can get kind of messy and confusing.
Right. Oh, and I was just thinking, I had another idea that went through my mind: manipulation
Mhm.
and lack of compromise. Can you help us understand those two terms a little bit better? Because I think you can explain it better than I can. When someone feels manipulated, and let me just try this and then you
Yeah.
can correct me if I'm wrong. When someone feels manipulated, it's because the other person chooses not to take the halfway road, meaning meet you in the middle. They want you to come to them and do what they need, and their needs are better than your needs. So, in order to have anything to do with that person, you have to do it their way. Would that be a correct um, explanation for
Of
manipulation, or
manipulation,
can you think of it
that
better?
could, okay, I'll put it, I might phrase this a little bit differently, but I think in the end we're going to say something similar. So there are people with narcissistic personalities, meaning that they see the world only through the lens of how things impact them. And
Mm-hmm.
so they might create all kinds of communication and behaviors to manipulate other people to get what they want. And so that is one example of manipulation that in my therapy office I would hear a lot about those kinds of manipulations. Um, it happens a lot with people in relationships. A manipulation I think of as a pattern of behavior where one person wants to control the other person somehow. And so if
Right.
you are somebody who is feels you're being manipulated by someone else, then just know that you always have a choice in how you respond to someone's attempt to manipulate. Once
Mm-hmm.
you recognize that somebody goes about getting things in a manipulative way, let's say, let me think of an example. Like, oh, in my family, it was really common for either of the parents to guilt trip, you, so that you would do what they wanted you to do. And they'd either compare you to the neighbors or say, you know, this is what good girls do, or this is what smart people do. And those kinds of phrases are meant to manipulate you so that you'll do what they want you to do, right? If you were going to be a good girl, you would do this. And so once we recognize that the person is trying to control us, then we have a choice in how we respond. We don't have to always respond the same way. We can change our response.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so my mother would often she would say something negative. This used to be my pattern growing up, and it took many years into adulthood before I changed it. but she would say something that I would consider very provocative and negative about me. Like my son got diagnosed with diabetes when he was 1. And even though she was a nurse, she told me it was because I fed him too much and that I made him get diabetes. Yeah. So so if I then went to argue with her or disagree with her, it would turn into this big, fight between us or argument between us. And she knew that I would get so angry that I would end up saying something really mean to her because I was so hurt and offended by her. But guess what happens? When at the end of that, I would feel so guilty that I was mean to her, that I said something mean, that I would forget all about all the shaming and blaming she had done to me early on. Do you see?
Right.
So,
Yeah.
and it took me a lifetime almost to realize that was part of her game. You know what I mean? She could poke me and provoke me and say things that she knew, like you were talking about before with the jabbing or the button pushing. And every time I would lose my temper and I would say something that I regretted because I felt like I got pushed too far. But what ended up working a lot better when I started to get more awareness around this pattern. So that's what I think about manipulation as a pattern. For someone to get what they want from someone else. And
Right.
so then I would say to her, you're what you're saying to me is negative, and if you keep saying negative things, I'm going to say goodbye and hang up the phone, or I'm going to leave. For now, I'm just going to leave. And so I would warn her, and then I would have to follow through and do that. And so she
Yeah.
didn't like it, but it really did work because she did much less of that manipulation once I started to set limits and boundaries. And that's where I think you were going with this. That
Oh, yes.
right? When
Oh,
people are
yes.
manipulative, you have to set your own personal limits and boundaries, not to control them. You can't control the other person.
No.
It's to
No.
control you so that you feel safe and that you're going to protect yourself so you don't expose yourself to somebody else's verbal assaults or put
Yeah.
downs or whatever.
Well, and yeah, I appreciate exactly what you're saying, and that goes perfectly into the next thing I was going to say is, yeah, boundaries are so important, even emotional boundaries when you're inside of the group. But mine was to protect me because I would have a mom that would drive right by my driveway. So the story was that my dad went into memory care. And before my dad went into memory care, my mom and dad would come over and have a glass of wine and cheese and crackers. Then, as soon as my dad went into memory care, my mom no longer had a desire to come over and have even a cup of coffee with me. And in order for me to see her, I had to go to her house. And if I didn't go to her house, then I was the bad daughter who did not want to spend time with her. And that wasn't true, but it very much hurt that there was almost like a curtain. Okay, now dad can't see that I'm not coming to visit you, so I don't have to come anymore. I'm like, oh, okay. So by my moving away, I no longer had her having to drive by my house to hurt me. And I felt that that was my form of manipulation was in order for you to spend time with me, you got to come to me. And I do it now because
That was your mother.
Yeah, I do it now because I love her. And I am trying my best to have some kind of relationship with her. But I know that I have to put up an emotional boundary now.
Yeah.
And remember that it's twice as filtered now what I share because I don't want it to be put down or disregarded or invalidated. So now I'm very careful what I share with her. And I've tested to see where my limits were a couple of times and like, oh, okay, right, okay, I got it. I understand. Now that goes into our next one, which is the lack of desire to compromise. Okay, so now we have she has a desire to get together. and I'm saying, okay, great, let's meet in such a town. Because now we're both driving equal distance.
Mm-hmm.
And then the excuses came. It's too hot. It's too far. It's too. No, I can't. No, I can't. No, I can't. But are you coming next week to my house?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay. I understand now.
Mm-hmm.
So the Diamond Rio came up with a great song, and you'll have to listen to it. Meet Me in the Middle. Oh, I love that song. It's so appropriate for family, for friends, for anyone. It's like if you're going all the distance, it's not really a relationship.
Mm-hmm.
So you need to choose the people who will meet you in the middle, who are willing to invest their time and energy to meet you. Now, both of these topics kind of go off the idea, they kind of segue off of communication, but they are still a way of making sure that you and your family are meeting up together to have an equal grounding.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not, as we talked about, these barriers are important for your emotional health. Just like Theresa said, you can't change them. You got to know what's right for you. And yes, even if it's a family member, you still have to know what's right for you. And it hurts. It hurts a lot when it's one thing to say it to a girlfriend, fine. If that's the way you're going to be, there's not much I can do, or boyfriend, or. But when it's your own family, I get it. That's hard, wouldn't you say, Theresa?
Mm-hmm. I think it is. I think it can be hard with all relationships, but I think it's particularly hard with parents, our parents, because we want to trust them and think they have our best interest at heart all the time, and it doesn't. Our experience doesn't always match that. But I wanted to share one other thing that really helped me once I started setting boundaries and limits, and I saw that it was working, and I thought, okay, so I put limits on my relationship with my mother, but I also knew she wasn't going to be alive much longer. She passed away 3 years ago. And so before she died, maybe a year or two before she died, I was doing this vision work that I do now and I teach other people. And I remember she was part of the vision of, um, somebody from Brave Thinking coached me around, um, do a vision for how you want her to treat you, how you want her to talk to you. And then when you go to see her, you treat her the way you wish she would treat you. But still keep your limits and your boundaries, but have that intention of
Right.
communicating from the vision of, I'm going to treat her the way I want her to treat me. And just changing the way I looked at her from the intention of that made our interactions much more positive, because
Yeah.
I was very respectful and kind and generous. And at least in my perspective, I did everything I could because that was how I always hoped she would treat me. And she did to some degree. She did to some degree, to the best of her ability. And
I
the put downs very much went away, almost altogether, not 100%, but way reduced.
Right. Oh, right. Yeah, I just had that meeting last week with my mom, and the same structure of going into believing that you're bringing your best self, and
Hmm.
you're going to let things go, use breath work whenever something is derogatory, and just say, "Oh, okay." I love that. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. And there was one time when my mom was trying to tell me something, and she's like, and I said, "Oh, isn't every case 50-50?" She's like, "Darn, you got me on that one." But yeah, I did bring that visioning into
Yes.
the last visit, and we did have a nice visit.
Yes.
And I remembered our other rule is consider how you respond.
Yes.
Consider how you're responding. You want to be the best version, even in
Yes.
the light of those negative comments. And
Yeah.
that you can use in any of these cases,
Yeah.
that you can use to really protect yourself during the family dinner table and everything.
Yes.
Excuse me, I have to go to the bathroom and take off. If you're not liking the
Yeah.
conversation, there's no one who can tie you to your chair during the dinner table.
Mm-hmm.
But
You can always
anyway,
take breaks. You can always take breaks.
yeah, you're not required to sit there the whole time. Even if a parent says, you may not go, I'm like, I gotta go.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I mean, that's getting off the point, but you do need to excuse yourself. And I had gone through that a little bit last week. And just, how you react is going to affect you a lot longer than it affects them.
Right, and remind yourself that it's a them issue. If you are feeling attacked by the other person or manipulated, what really helped me is I kept reminding myself I don't have to receive. She might be throwing me the ball of a put down, but I don't have to catch it. I don't have to receive it. I can just let
Yeah.
her hold it. So I could say, I'm going to choose not to respond to that, mom, and we're going to change the topic, or we could just end right now if you'd prefer that. But
Right.
I would not receive the ball of the put downs anymore. I would give it right back to her, and I would say, nope, that's not true. Nope.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we have the control over how we want to let the conversation continue in our families, and we have the control of when we want to stop them altogether.
Yes.
And knowing, okay, as I said last week, I can come for an hour and we'll see how 2 hours goes. And
There you
just
go.
say, promise an hour.
Yeah.
If you have family that's unskilled, as I said, we got to be careful about whether or not we call our family toxic or unskilled. But if they're unskilled, you can say to them, I'll show up for an hour so that you're putting in your presence.
Mm-hmm.
Because there may be a family member you do want to see.
Mm-hmm.
There may be a family member that you care a lot about that has never devalued you. Like I have a sister-in-law I think greatly of. And she's so supportive, and every time she and I communicate, it's very supportive to each other, and I make sure she understands that. Maybe even go out of your way to thank the people in your family who are showing you the respect and the support, and say thank you. I so appreciate the way that you value my opinions. And maybe that's a way to let the other family know that she notices.
Mm-hmm.
She notices. Turn it around and make it about supporting and giving the gift of gratitude
Mm-hmm.
to another family member who is showing you the respect. Hey, Jim, I really appreciate the fact that you stood up for me when everyone else seemed to be getting down on me. Thank you. That meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
You'll be very surprised at how fast, it's showing up that she's walking in grace.
Yeah.
Well, we're being kind of jerky. It will show up.
It will
And
show up.
that's a good way to be. Now, what if the conversation, we got to wrap this up in a moment, but what if the conversation is non existent? What if you have a family and everybody's on their phone, nobody's talking, nobody's doing anything? Well, I want to tell you about a workbook that I created, Love Your Life. Now, this starts with the family, with the parents, and it's all about getting them to talk again. What are some of the special dates? What I love most about him, and what I love most about her. It's like a workbook. Challenge dates for $25 or less. Let's say you are on a budget. Let's see if you can be creative. Love takes time and attention. What can you do on these dates? Take a picture of yourself doing a date that costs less than $25. Budgeting with unequal incomes, that was a big thing for me. Our common interest, remembering why you got together in the first place. A whole bunch of places to put dates. And then, do you remember the song Pina Colada?
Yes.
That is exactly what this is all about. People forget why they fell in love. They forget about their interests. Life comes, work comes, everything comes. It's time to remember why you fell in love. And then dream building. Where does the center come together? Budgeting for the little ones, remembering that each of you have money that you had to put into the pot. Acknowledging your vulnerabilities and your bad habits. And then talking about them. And then modeling them for the children to come. These are all cute little things. Person of increase. Teach your kids to be volunteers. Turn off the TV and go outside. That's a big one. Rainy day activities. Do your kids know how to entertain themselves? And will you participate? Sometimes that's all it takes. If mom and dad are too busy, the kids see it. They do. Don't think you're not doing it. And then what about fears? Talk about your fears so the kids know it's okay to have fears, even at adult age. This is the one where the conversation balls came in. And then the very last page is helping your children get ready to leave the home. And that's a little scrap workbook that you can do with your family if you find that I'm out of ideas, I don't know what to do. That takes you from the first date all the way until your kids leave the nest. And that will bring a thriving family. What do you think, Theresa?
I think it's great. I'm going to order some of your workbooks for some of the families that I work with, because I work with a lot of families that have young children and teenagers. But I love your idea of using the workbook to as one way of coaching the parents, right? To really be more conscious and aware of not only their relationship with each other, but what they're inviting or guarding against with their kids and how that impacts the whole family. I love it.
Yeah, it was something I created during my um, positive supportive language time because people love taking pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And you can put your pictures in there, you can put your writing in there. It's just a way to say, let's come back together again.
Great.
If there's money challenges, you can figure that out. And I teach a class called The Emotional Side of Money. So if people need to know how to do that, I think I'm the queen of that. I lived through that. I can teach that one. But any final words, Theresa, that you would like to share, or any way that they can get a hold of you or ask a question?
Oh, sure, sure. Thank you for the invitation. I have a website, and hopefully it's easy to remember because it's the name of my business. So if you go to www.lifeyouimagine.org, um, you can sign up I send out weekly newsletters, and my focus going forward is going to be much more geared towards families than ever before. So you'll be getting weekly newsletters. You'll also hear about upcoming events like free workshops that I'm hosting. I do some in person now, and I do some virtually. And you're
Mm-hmm.
always welcome to call if you want to have a complimentary strategy session for 30 to 45 minutes, whether you want to talk about your own vision or a vision for your family and learn more about my Thriving Families program. Happy to share with you. And it was such a pleasure to
That's
be here with you today, Suzanne. Thank you for inviting me.
Thank
Uh,
you, Teresa. With you and Michelle, I'm hoping that these ladies will understand that therapy is not the only way to go. You and Michelle have shown these women that sometimes it's not about retelling our story 500 times. It's more
yeah.
about taking the lessons and moving forward. And that's why both you and Michelle DeSantis are a very important part of my organization
Thank
and
you.
being willing to be here because I need these women to know that just because Medicare pays for your therapy
Mhm.
doesn't mean it's the best therapy for you.
Well, in therapy, I don't want to underrate it, but one of the things that made me want to change from that to coaching is that um, I didn't want to constantly view things from the problem perspective. So, and that's
Right.
therapy in America is just geared towards that. What's the diagnosis? What's the problem? What's the treatment? And so, what we do in coaching that's a little bit different with much different results is instead of asking what's broken or what's the problem, we ask, what would you love? And so
Yes.
people come up with a much different answer when they have that question in front of them and somebody supporting them to figure out what they would love more of instead of what's wrong with me. So,
Absolutely. Oh,
so
Teresa, I
thank
so
you.
appreciate you being here. And I want to
Thank
thank
you.
all of you for coming to the Aspie Bridge this week. As I say, I'm in the air conditioning. That's why the bridge isn't behind me. I'm not outside in the heat right now. But I want you to know that please approach us. And also, please subscribe. We'd love to see more and more women get use of this channel because there's so many great resources.
Yes.
And that's one thing I've heard that's missing for all of us late diagnosis resources. Well, here you are. Here they are right
Suzanne is
here.
the queen of them.
And share it with people you know so that they can have it. But I want to say thank you. Coming up later this month, we're going to have money bad habits. We're going to have getting rid of habits that we don't like about ourselves. And there may be other fun things. But please come back next week. And I want to say thank you and have a wonderful day.
Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye, Teresa. Thank you.
Thank you, Suzanne.